move on over to the aforementioned Las Vegas Raiders, as it was an interesting season for them last year when you kind of take it in as a whole. Went 8-9, and obviously going in, you would say, man, that's a solid year. But considering that how it started with the whole Josh McDaniels ordeal, and then obviously Jimmy Garoppolo, and then such. But nonetheless, Antonio Pierce stepped in. They kind of had to turn around towards the late end of the season, started playing some really good football. So in terms of losses, obviously I mentioned the head coach switch there. And then in terms of player personnel, cut Jimmy Garoppolo, lost running back Josh Jacobs, also tight end Austin Hooper. And then on the offensive line, lost guard Greg Van Roten and tackle Jermaine Illuminor. And then lost also staple wide receiver Hunter Renfrow in the slot, and then also cornerback Amik Robertson. But in terms of additions, added quarterback Gardner Minshew, and if I believe I saw the report correctly, I think they've already named him quarterback 1 as of today, right, John?
Yeah, he is the week 1 starter, although it seemed reluctantly because Antonio Pierce did not have glowing things to say about either quarterback in the way they finished the QB battle.
Yeah, and I thought, one would think that maybe he would have given them another week to sort it out, I guess, but who knows like I said, what they've seen behind closed doors and how short that leash may be. But Minshew already, as of this recording, the starter, and then brought in running back Alexander Madison to back up Zamir White, as it looks like it'll be Zamir White to be the main guy for them at running back. And then on the offensive line, added offensive lineman Andrews Pete from the Saints, and then guard Cody Whitehair as well. But their big fish free agent was defensive tackle Christian Wilkins from the Miami Dolphins. I forgot exactly the numbers, but one of the higher paid defensive tackles now in football, and deservedly so. And then draft wise, grabbed tight end Brock Bowers out of Georgia at pick 13 in the first round, and then center Jackson Powers Johnson in the second, and then further bolster that O-line in the third round with Delmar Glaze out of Maryland. So, John, I feel like we've had the same conversation with the Raiders every year at this point, but it seems like is this year maybe a little bit different, or does it seem like it's going to be more of the same, what we've said before?
The weird part about the Raiders is that one of the big concerns that we've both had for a really long time is getting difference makers that is not just Max Crosby. They go out and do that, getting Christian Wilkins, the guy, he's a stud. And so you add in some great interior pressure. You add in a great run stuffer. You just add in another force along that defensive line that's going to make it a lot harder to want to go out there and double team Max. And if you do, it's a lot easier to punish you for it when Christian's able to go one-on-one up the middle. So you have two different spots in which you can truly, throw pressure the quarterback's way. And I know that interior pressure can make Max's life a lot easier because it can flush the quarterback out towards his direction. So the Raiders' defensive line is certainly going to be really interesting to watch this season. But at the same time, on the offensive side of the ball, we do have some question marks because the last couple of years, the identity of this team has been the running game behind Josh Jacobs. You lose him, you add in, Alexander Madison. All reports to me seem to be that Zamir White is going to be the starter, so Madison maybe is more of a depth option who can kind of get a mix in there. We don't truly know how the dynamic of the running game is going to work. Will it be Zamir White as a workhorse? Will it be a committee where you've got both him and Madison kind of in there? You throw in some of the other guys like Amir Abdullah kind of in the passing game. We don't know. We don't know how that's going to work. But the running game, like I said, that's kind of been their identity. And with the quarterback play of Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, I don't know if this offense is going to be able to just light it up out there unless the running game is solid. So I do think it's a big year for Zamir White and or Madison to prove themselves that they can kind of step up and be the guy. They did draft Dylan Lobb. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But he's apparently an interesting option there. I don't know if he'll be a day one contributor, but I've heard a lot of people are really high on this guy when it comes to his potential, and maybe in a couple of years he could be somebody important there. So I don't know. This offense will be interesting. I really like their tight end room now that you have Brock Bowers. Obviously, he's a super dynamic threat. You added Michael Mayer last year, and then you've got Harrison Bryant, who's kind of been a solid veteran around the league for a couple of years, formerly, from the Cleveland Browns. So I feel like they've got a lot of good depth at tight end. I think all three tight ends are capable of, being contributors in the blocking game and, being weapons outside. And then obviously at receiver, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. Those weapons, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, feel really scary. It just doesn't feel as scary when you have the names that they have at quarterback. It's kind of the only unfortunate part. So I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about this Raiders team. I like the offseason decision they made to keep Antonio Pierce because this team has just made a lot of questionable coaching hires and whatever throughout the years. But it seemed like Pierce had won over the locker room. You had Max Crosby threatening to demand a trade if they didn't hire him, all this kind of stuff. So clearly the players like him. So just from that simple fact, I like what they did in the offseason. But I will say overall, I think I was a fan of, the additions they made. I don't know if it immediately reaps benefits in terms of like making their record significantly better, because like at 8-9, they had a good year last year. And it's like, when you look at this team, does it look like a 10-win team? Does it look like an 11-win team in a division with the Kansas City Chiefs? Where I just don't know. Especially in the AFC as a whole, I don't know their schedule off the top of my head, but I would imagine that it's not an easy one. So I don't know in terms of record-wise if they do much better than they did last year. I could see them win 9. I could maybe see them win 10, but I don't think we're getting into like the 11-plus win range. So yeah, I don't know. The Raiders, they had a good offseason to me in terms of building for the future, because of the additions of Christian Wilkins, like I said, to help Max on the defensive line, because of adding Brock Bowers, who's going to be a dynamic weapon for you in the future. I really loved the pick of Jackson Powers-Johnson for the interior offensive line. We've known that they've had like Colton Miller over at left tackle for a while. He's been solid, but kind of the rest of the offensive line has been sort of in flux the last couple of years. So I love the Jackson Powers-Johnson addition. I think that he could maybe be a day one starter at center. I don't know if they've actually declared him that. I love the Cody Whitehair addition. He can be a solid guard. So it just feels like they've kind of shored up some holes, shored up some of the inconsistencies on the roster. And it really does feel like they're I hate to be that guy because we've said it for so many teams in the past, but they're a QB away from being maybe really scary.
Yeah, and I completely agree, especially with that part, because the offense, the bones of the team seem to be in place. Now you just need, like you said, the dynamic quarterback per se, to create those 1 or 2 extra plays, stress those other defenses out, maximize those targets. Because like I said, running back room could be a question, and then wide receivers, cornerbacks. I know Jack Jones was a really good pickup for them, and he is talented. So hopefully, he could build off what he ended last year with. I don't know, we've been told by Raider Nation about Hobbs, and he's been solid, but once again, we'll see. And hey, maybe in terms of some hopefulness, I think too it's possible that Christian Wilkins being there as well not only helps obviously Max Crosby, but their former first round pick from last year. Is it Wilson? I forget. Tyree Wilson. Yeah, Tyree Wilson, excuse me, who obviously was coming off a foot injury into the draft. So who knows how much that slowed him down in the last year. And so, maybe he could be a key piece in regards to making that defense a little scarier as well. But, I'm with you. I think maybe wild card, depending on how the schedule shakes and, how things go with this quarterback comp. Because, Minshew's been solid. If I remember, I know he did really well with the Colts last year. I'm trying to remember, blanking. Did the Colts make the playoffs last year, or they missed out? I think they just missed out, right? But
I think they just missed out.
Yeah, but nonetheless, with Richardson out by like week 3 or 4, offense wasn't horrible with Minshew. He was capable of at least operating and directing it. So we'll see, obviously, with these.
And I will say, too, he fed Michael Pittman like crazy. So Devontae Adams, who was, at times last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, a little upset at the way the offense is being run, he should get a healthy diet of targets this year.
Yeah, and hopefully on target, because it was not great with Jimmy Garoppolo, as many remember or have been reminded of recently. So, we'll see if those Las Vegas Raiders can make that push into the playoffs. Actually finish it unlike the last year, or if maybe it'll be another year of kind of rebuilding yet again for them. But anyhow, let's go on down the way of the NFC